recognized by Malaysian corporations now. Okay, next one. Then there's the labor organization. Malaysia actually has not got a very good reputation when it comes to managing foreign labor. If you look at the things that have been happening in the newspapers, which are actually picked up by a lot of foreign investors and a lot of people who are interested in buying selling companies, we don't have a very good reputation because of the way we manage our foreign immigrant labor. Okay, but when you actually talk to companies, as Jeffrey says again, there is a denial, a sense of denial that whatever that's happening within your supply chain does not impact the image of your company. But let's think about it for those of you who are from corporates. If you have a downstream supplier which comes out in the newspaper for treating all his immigrant labor badly, and is actually reported in the newspaper that 90% of his products are for X company, what is the fallout? What is the brand fallout? Right? That's the view that corporations should take. It's not that you don't manage the company, but if they make 90% of your product, you influence the company. You have a very significant influence to the company and how it operates. Right? So these are things that need a paradigm shift, so to say, within management. Next one, corruption.
Sorry, Archie, can I just interrupt since you're in that?
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, because I forget. Okay, we understood earlier on that there are some of those labor conditions, regulations that we have not actually ratified. So in our doing our GRI, certain, for instance, it is actually materially being identified. So, but it's not ratified by the local government.
Right.
Would you that?
It is within the will of a company to recognize whatever is material to your business and to address the issue, whether there is a legal requirement, whether there is an international drive or not. Why do a lot of companies that actually operate above compliance, go beyond compliance? If you look at the Tesco's of the world, if you look at the Johnson & Johnson's of the world, their drive is to be beyond compliance, to be the leaders instead of the laggards. So it doesn't matter whether there are laws, whether it's been ratified or not ratified. If it's an issue that impacts your company, then you address it. You have to address it because it affects your business. How do you justify the non-address of a material issue? Right? So these are things that's why in terms of management, it requires a lot of understanding of how the dots join together. And that's where management actually plays, senior management, executive management actually plays a very prominent role in ensuring the drive to sustainability management. Right? In terms of corruption, there are issues within Malaysia when it comes to corruption. Now, how you manage it within an organization is very important. One of the first things that we actually talk to companies is, have you done a corruption risk analysis? Right? Do you know where your risk points are? Who are your frontliners? Who are your exposed personnel? And how do you protect them? It's not a matter of saying, hey, you are doing corrupt practices. It's a matter of identifying you are at risk, how do I protect you? And it becomes part and parcel of your employee management program or your corporate governance program as well. Okay, next one. So this is a study that was done by Musa. I didn't have time, I'm very sorry, I didn't have time to do the latest, summarize the latest report by the ACCA as well. If you look at the ACCA judges report, there's also very in-depth review of what are the weaknesses in terms of sustainability reporting are in Malaysia. Next slide. Good, carry on. All of it. I don't have time. Right, so if you look in terms of how do you do a sustainability report, you basically need to do a gap analysis. You need to understand what where your key weaknesses are. You may go for the GRI, you may go for beyond GRI, or you may go for other standards, or adaptation of those standards, or how many other standards that you are interested in. Right? One of the things which I find very weak in Malaysia is that we don't like to talk to our stakeholders. One thing which I like about the BAT report actually and the BAT approach, and as well as they actually take the trouble, they document, they talk to their stakeholders. But generally in Malaysia, the way that management is that we don't like to engage with our stakeholders. The only level that we engage with our stakeholders is, number one, if you have a risk in terms of your stakeholder being, of course, your like Nestle being your supplier in terms of your product, right? So we need to engage with them, we need to find out their issues, we need to take care of them. But generally, there's a very blasé view in handling shareholders. There's a very blasé view in handling communication from the public, right? We don't like to collate, we don't like to understand. The traditional view is that a corporation is a corporation and the public has got nothing to do with a corporation, right? And it is very hard when you take that view to actually determine what your material issues are. Because if you don't understand what people are saying about your company, how do you know what is important that you need to manage? What are the people saying about your brand? Do you know? What are the people saying about your product? Right? A lot of times, companies that come to me and we talk and we look at the processes, they say, oh, our customer relationship management, our customer service program will actually manage it. But I'm working now with a company that has got 7 different questionnaires for customer service management, customer relationship management. How do you collate and how do you analyze and how do you actually deliver the best message to corporations? Because as Malaysian companies grow up, or not Malaysian, as companies grow up, they tend to put up a lot of walls within each department. So you get the silo effect. So you fully understand, right? So when you get the silo effect within companies and departments, it's very hard because I must protect my turf. You can't come into my turf. But if I cannot come into your turf and understand what you're doing, how do we work for the betterment of the company? Right? That is a very serious problem that is in Malaysia and it really needs to be addressed. Okay? Right? So we need to look at that. Then we look in terms of what do we need to do? What does the data tell us? It is important. If you're going to do sustainability reporting, data. There's an echo in here. Right? You need data. But the question is, what sort of data? Right, what the GRI has given you is 130 to 150, I can't remember, worth of KPIs. How many of those KPIs address your issues? Or do you need to develop new KPIs? Or do you have your own KPIs? Right? And of that, what is useful for you to develop a program to manage your risk in terms of your product, in terms of your brand, in terms of your community image, in terms of your reputation? Right? And that's the view that should be taken. So then you look at how to improve in terms of what you need to improve and how then there are also measures that are available to measure impact on brands. If you talk to marketing people, there are branding companies that are able to measure improvement in terms of brands. Profit is one thing. In Malaysia, we are very profit oriented. Bottom line is so important to us. Right? But is it really the best measure for how successful a company is? Or do we look in terms of employee motivation? Wherever we work with companies, we always try to report the attrition rate. Some companies are actually very shy. But if you don't know what your attrition rate is, how do you know whether you have an issue or you don't have an issue? And the question is, if you have an attrition rate of maybe 48, 45%, what do you do about it? Do you recognize it as an issue? Given now, number one, we have a serious lack of experienced personnel. We cannot attract the best talents there is. If we do attract them, we cannot keep them. That's a problem that all companies face, whether big or small. Right? So how then do you talk about employee motivation? Then let's look at environment. The favorite term is, oh, I comply to the law. But if you don't know what the law is and what the law covers, how do you comply with the law? Right? There is a serious lack of knowledge, there's a serious lack of awareness because of the way that companies are structured and has been traditionally looking at a business. Okay? And it is not just for Malaysia, you find this across the board for all corporations. But one thing which we are very good at is social responsibility. We like to give money. We like to look good giving money. Right? And one of the reasons why there's so many pictures of, oh, I'm here, I'm there, is because traditionally, for those of you who are in corporate com, that's the way that you've been trained, correct? You have to talk about your awards, you have to talk about what you've given up as a company. But what are you trying to drive at? What is the purpose of heading your report? And if we tell you we don't think you need to pad, the question is, will you listen to your consultant? Okay, next one. So in terms of international drivers, where a lot of companies are actually using the sustainability program is to drive efficiencies and cost effectiveness. And this is tied up with life cycle assessment, life cycle costing. And although I disagree in a sense with Jeffrey that it is a bit premature to look in terms of costing, cost impact and all that. For certain aspects, yes. One of the key difficulties in Malaysia is to determine the impact of the how do you say community investments, right? It is very difficult, primarily because the accounting systems in Malaysia do not recognize it, and there is no way to actually pull out this data. And if we ask for that to be done, we actually essentially are telling the accounting department to restructure and recode all of the way that they put in their costs, right? So a lot of companies are not willing to do that. But what you can actually drive in terms of cost efficiency and cost savings is how you're managing your electricity. How do you consider technology? Has technology been used to help you save costs? Have you done cost savings analysis, life cycle costing, life cycle assessment, looking at what sort of environmental impact you're going to get and what sort of costs have you achieved? And then that's for your first year. The second year, have you achieved it? Right? So it is possible and it is going there now. But in Malaysia, we are still stuck where the world has moved forward here, in terms of using reports as communication tools. And actually, if you ask me honestly, we are not using it to the best ability as well. Because a sustainability report, well written, well summarized, well documented, well presented, can drive company reputation so much more further than your best marketing efforts, your best investor engagement programs. Right? Next. So, in terms of the information, this is a global McKinsey survey that was done. This is what CEOs are actually saying around the world. They use it to, sustainability programs are used to reduce costs, drive competitive advantage, increase revenue, and do risk management. Right, next one. And in terms of product